Today we're going to see one of the more interesting outcomes that we've seen in a long time with some interesting legal conclusions. Hi everyone, welcome to today's badge cam lesson here at Active Self-Protection. I'm your host, John Correa.
I'm your co-host, Mike Williver. Today's video comes to us from the home of the Alamo, San Antonio, Texas.
MagTech is the only freedom seed I use on the range. I personally have over 100,000 rounds downrange of MagTech, and it's unbelievably reliable, very accurate, and a great value. Pick some up for your next range trip wherever you shop for range supplies.
Go read the news stories that I've linked in the description, and you will see that these officers are chasing a couple of guys in a stolen car who have been using it to burglarize other cars and threatening people at gunpoint. And they are about to, kind of corral these guys. You can see it happen. The one guy's going to run off. The officers are going to chase him. We have badge cam audio. Let's listen in. Second officer shows up and ventilates this guy. He shuffled off this mortal coil, did not survive this. You can see the gun in his hand here. The first officer, the only shot that was fired between the first officer and this perp, when the first officer who was chasing this guy drew his gun, he shot himself I'm not sure exactly where he shot himself, but he shot himself. He recovered fully according to the news stories. You know, Mike, I tried to find a joke about, this is where they know that what pecani sauce is supposed to taste like in this one, and I just couldn't find it.
It's New York City.
I know, but I mean, in San Antonio, they know what pecani sauce is supposed to taste like.
Yeah.
And if you get that joke, you probably should schedule your colonoscopy. You know, Mike, I think a lot of people look at this kind of stuff and they're like, well, gosh, that got out of hand in a hurry. But I think it's worth noting context really matters. And these guys that we're chasing here, this isn't a routine traffic stop. This isn't an investigative kind of issue. These are violent felons that we have a whole bunch of unmarked and marked units chasing. And that context says we have violence is highly likely. And so I think when we don't have that context, when we ignore that context, this looks like maybe a lot, but with the context, I don't think it is.
Yeah, these are not unlike a lot of the guys I went after for any number of years, mainly in the North County of San Diego. Gangbangers, ne'er-do-wells, scallywags, ruffians, if you will. And these guys are down for whatever. And you've also got to be down for whatever as a law enforcement officer pursuing them, knowing that at any moment this could go south. So as John said a moment ago, I think it's important to reiterate what he said. This is not, we're pulling someone over for not quite stopping all the way at a four-way stop sign, right? This is, we know who we're going after. These are bad guys. There's a very high likelihood they are violent. There is a high likelihood they are armed. As it turns out, they were armed. So these cops are already at 11 before they even get out of their car. They know this is going to be probably going to be spicy, and spicy it was.
Yeah, and recognize, good reminder though, again, when you're going to high risk stuff like this, to manage your arousal level, manage your breathing rate, keep your heart rate down when you're in the car so that you can stay in that problem-solving side of your brain. I think these officers did that and did a pretty good job of it, but recognize that you want to do that to the best of your abilities. So now, again, you see the guy come up. This is a guy out of the passenger side, but he was the driver who shows up in this. And of course, then everybody, that milkshake brings all the boys to the yard. They did get the second guy into custody here without any incident. Now, thinking about our first officer here, he is going to see a furtive gesture. So he's chasing our bad guy. And then as he sees the furtive gesture, he is going to choose to draw his own gun. Unfortunately, of course, Mike, the news story tells us that he shot himself. We didn't see that on camera, but we did hear about it in the original from the PD. And this is just a reminder, man, your trigger finger has to stay high and at home until two conditions are met and you've made a decision to fire and your muzzle is oriented towards the target. If you move that trigger finger too soon, even though it's by mistake, and I don't want to give this guy too hard a time about things, but his mistake here took him out of the fight. And given the fact that this is a violent felon who's just pulling a gun, that could have proven very, very costly.
Yeah, I can go out on a limb here and say this detective who shot himself accidentally has already been through the ringer. I'm sure he's been more hard on himself than anyone could be on him externally. But yeah, there's just something we have to reiterate. You know, if you're in a situation like this, it's all the more important to pay very close attention to your gun presentation, to how you draw it. Let me talk about why he drew it for a moment, because I think a lot of people think that like just, you know, running and chasing a bad guy and drawing a gun is a natural thing. It's not. It really never gets practiced. So maybe that's something we could start working on a little bit in the training arena is, hey, let's get some blue guns, you know, some non-deadly, you know, basically dummy guns, and practice drawing from, you know, a running position or something like that. Because really, to run quickly and efficiently, drawing a gun is not helpful. It's the antithesis of helpful. It's awkward and it throws you off your rhythm of running. So drawing the gun only did that because he had to, not because he wanted to. And of course, as John said, I'll say it for a third time, you just got to be really, really careful when you're doing that on the move like he was.
Yeah, and ingraining the rules of, say, firearms handling such that they are unconscious competence, that you just do them so clearly every time, is critically important. And again, I don't want to give this detective too hard a time. He's already borne the brunt of his problems here. And thankfully, our second officer shows up too. Now, let's think about him, because he clearly responded here to what he is seeing, which is a fleeing felon drawing a gun. And we have watched him do it. You can see the gun in his hand right here. And so, you know, I think that when you look at this, if you go, well, wait a minute, the shot that he heard is actually the detective's. I don't even know if this officer heard the shot, Mike. So we haven't established that. I haven't read the reports of what he actually said went down. But I can say from an objective perspective that under the standard of Tennessee versus Garner, you have a fleeing felon in possession of a firearm. Can an officer articulate here that he is an objective, reasonable threat of death or great bodily harm to the officers and to the community right now? I think the answer to that is yes. So whether he even heard the shot or not, I think he has objective, reasonable evidence to use deadly force against this guy.
All right, so let's unpack what John just said for a moment. So if, in fact, this officer, and I know you're probably asking yourself at home, well, of course he heard the shot. It happened a few feet away from him. You'd be amazed what auditory exclusion can do under stress like this. It is a powerful drug. Believe me, I've felt the effects of it. So let's say he did hear the shot and thought it came from the bad guy. All that would do in you know, as far as his decision making, would make it more of an option to be forced to shoot this guy and employ deadly force to stop him from going on and hurting someone else. If he didn't hear the shot and didn't think the shot came from the suspect, all that does is tell us, okay, that's one less thing he could have used to decide. However, he's still got all the elements of Tennessee versus Garner here. Fleeing felon. He's already wanted for a felony. He's now, he's known to have abused violence before in his criminal history, and now he's running away with a gun in his hand that he could have dropped, by the way. If he was trying to get rid of it, he could have done that. However, he decided not to do that. He decided to pull the gun and continue running and not dropping it. So unfortunately for this guy, he sealed his own fate. Look, John and I have said this a million times. Bad guys, we know some of you guys watch the channel. If you're going to run from the police and you have a firearm, you got two options that are good. The best one is leave it in the car and don't bring it with you. Number two, if you do have a gun on you, don't go anywhere near it. Don't reach for it. Don't try to get rid of it. Don't try to throw it away because it's going to get you shot, just like a guy this guy shot.
Yeah, and again, this guy is the one who put the token in the skee ball machine, so he gets to spend the tickets at the prize table, is basically how that goes. And if you get that Chuck E. Cheese reference, make sure that you schedule your colonoscopy. Now, I also want to note here that our officer who used the deadly force and took the good shots, this is not an easy shot that he has here. So when he makes the decision, all right, I'm going to fire on this guy, what he ends up with is a guy who is 2 parking spots away from him. Now, your average parking spot is between 8 and 9 feet wide. So what you're looking at here, he's 2 parking spots away, and so he is probably anywhere from 16 to 18 feet distant and quartering away from the officer. That's not an easy shot, even when you're trying to kind of stand up tall and deliver. And so that marksmanship piece, now it's not a very far distance. It looks a little farther than it actually is because of the wide angle lens of the badge cam. But also, again, the fact that officer's moving and target is moving, that's not an easy feat. So this is another reminder, Mike, to go beyond your department-issued firearms instruction.
So law enforcement officers out there watching this, I'm talking to you now specifically. Think about the last time you went to do just basic qualification. Now, qualification is not training, right? Qualification is just showing you can proficiently and prudently and safely, use a firearm in the course of your duties. It's not really training per se. So the last time you went to qualify, you probably had something between 5 and 7 yards. That's about what this shot would be ish, right? That shot that you took on that stationary target, or let's say the target that turned and faced you, was you knowing it was coming, right? Being able to draw and get your same presentation you get every time to a target that's not going anywhere. You're not geeked up, and you make those shots. Now, this is why force on force is so critically important, because you need to have practiced this with simunitions, with being geeked up, with someone who's moving, someone blading away or quartering away, as John said, because this shot's not a gimme. This is something that I want you practicing over and over again in force on force training, so you get that not the muscle memory, I hate muscle memory, but you get that experience, those reps, those mental and physical reps, and how to do this, because it does not come easily, and it's not the same as shooting your 7-yard qual course.
Right. Generally here at ASP, we don't use muscle memory. We use, myelinated pathways or, remembered actions, but the colloquialism is muscle memory. All right, fine, whatever. I don't want to argue about it too much. I just think the shooting itself from this officer, I think objectively reasonable, no big deal, and quite easy to justify. I think that the officer shooting himself, gosh, let's remember, we don't want fratricide like that. We certainly don't want own goals like that. You don't want to take an L while your buddies are trying to end a deadly threat. So let's make sure we're practicing safe firearms handling. Let's make sure that we have the firearm skills to end the threat if we need to cover our ASP.